I'm not crying. You're crying.
Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose have lived the past 6 years plus as close friends, sharing the same dreams in WWE. At Fastlane, one could see just how much a seemingly filler 6-man tag team main event meant to the trio. It could be a watershed match for these guys as the Shield, but there's something more important to them: facing Baron Corbin. No, of course not. It was the emotion of the moment. Emotion, whether happiness, sadness, anger, fear, or a combo of all the above, has been a part of the wrestling sphere since, well, forever. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are the 10 most emotional wrestling matches. Number 10, CM Punk versus John Cena. Emotion comes in many different forms, like the threat of rioting if fans don't get a result, which leaves them euphoric. People in Chicago were there to see one result, and one result only: a CM Punk win over Chief Bastard John Cena. If they didn't get it, then they were going to tear the place apart, and possibly Cena for having the audacity to upend their hero on such a passion-fueled night. WWE, for once, chose the smart option of putting Punk over clean as a whistle. Sort of. Every offensive move from Punk was met with wild cheers, and every strike from Cena was greeted like the dubious babyface was punching a puppy. This was Chicago's night, not WWE's, and so the pop that ushered in Punk's victory was one of the biggest in company history. Number 9, Christian versus Alberto Del Rio. The prior month, my best friend Edge had officially retired from wrestling due to serious career-ending injuries, and he vacated the old World Heavyweight title into the bargain too. Adding to the roller coaster, his best friend and former brother, although we don't really mention that anymore, won it at Extreme Rules. As soon as Christian hauled the strap down from atop his ladder perch, the live crowd could sense that this meant everything to both childhood friends. They'd been through so many memorable moments together, but this one belonged exclusively to Christian. For the first time, he was the one standing in his own spotlight, and Edge could only look up at him with pride. Let's not talk about what came after, eh? Number 8, Ric Flair versus Big Van Vader. It's borderline laughable to fans now, but it was believable that the then 44-year-old Ric Flair could walk away from the business for good in 1993. That is why there was so much riding on his career versus title match with Big Van Vader at the 10th anniversary of STARRCADE, an event Flair had headlined first against Harley Race. People were willing to buy into the notion that the Nature Boy, who was returning home from a stint in the WWF, might be done, and they took the physical threat of Race's man Vader very seriously, because look at the bloody size of him. By the time Flair arrived at Charlotte's Independence Arena, his adoring throngs were whipped into a fervor by the growing belief that maybe, just maybe, he'd topple the beastly Vader and become world champ again. When Rick did, the place went bonkers. Number 7, Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar. To Vince McMahon, there was zero chance that his new fiery Latino signing would ever win gold. You see, you must be this high to become WWE champion. Guys Eddie's size had to possess something very extraordinary to make it practical. The good news is, Guerrero did. He was one of the most talented, over, and cherished stars of a generation when he rocked up to No Way Out 2004 for a match with McMahon Pet Project and the last thing he sees before he climaxes, Brock Lesnar. In an inspiring moment, Vince changed his mind and decided to put his biggest prize on Eddie. History was made and Kleenex sales went through the bloody roof. Not like that. There is a beautiful picture of Eddie standing on the entrance ramp with the WWE title in his right hand and the referee raising his left. Rarely has the chant, "You deserve it," been more apt. Number 6, Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Alright, so you're already outraged that another match isn't here. WrestleMania 30, the site of Daniel Bryan's first WWE title coronation, almost was. But consider the journey for a second. In the following 4 years, Bryan would go through so much emotional torture that it seemed impossible that he'd ever wrestle again. Then, when rumours started to circulate about his health improving, most figured he'd work outside of WWE. They'd never let him work in a company ring again, surely. So much for that. On the 20th of March 2018, Daniel proudly stood mid-ring on SmackDown and announced he'd been cleared by WWE doctors to resume his career. His rousing speech about fighting for your dreams was as dramatic as it was poignant. This was a man who was living proof of what he was saying. Suddenly, WrestleMania 34 took on more significance as the event hosting Bryan's comeback match. The whole thing was a blur, and that speaks to its emotion. Bryan could have been wrestling a WWE brawling buddy toy for that night for all fans cared. They were just so happy to see him doing what he loved. And Shane was there too. Number 5, Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior. Love. Now there's a powerful tool you can use to stir emotion. Not you, John and Nikki. At WrestleMania 7, the WWF had a purpose-built, natural story of two lovebirds who'd grown apart on screen when Randy Savage disgusted Miss Elizabeth by once again turning heel. How could you? So, what changed? Randy's career prospects, that's what. He lost to the Ultimate Warrior at Mania, and that meant in storyline, he was done. In reality, of course, the plan was to lessen Randy's workload as an in-ring talent. Consequently, Savage turned babyface when his manager Sherry hammered him post-match and Liz made the save. True love overcomes all was the overarching narrative. When Randy and his darling Elizabeth embraced for the first time in years, fans lost their minds. Grown men were sobbing in the stands, women were yearning for a love so strong in their lives, and everyone collectively fawned over the moment. A wedding was to come, and that meant even more tears. Number 4, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Most wrestlers would be lucky to have one memorable run in wrestling, let alone two. Then again, not many are Shawn Michaels. His stint in WWE from 2002 to 2010 arguably topped his first from 87 to 98. It was world class, and nobody wanted to see it come to an end. Sadly, as they say, all things must. To borrow another cliche, if you're gonna go out, do it in style. Old HBK sure did that. His back-to-back matches against The Undertaker at WrestleManias 25 and 26 are legendary, but it was the latter that inflamed the censors and had tear ducts swelling. Michael's sad puppy dog face as he waved to fans in Arizona captured the dawning realization that he was readying to say goodbye for good. Well, not for good, because Shawn returned at Crown Jewel last year, of course. Yay. That, though, despite what any critics say, cannot sully the impact of his proper send-off in 2010. Number 3, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Yes, here it is. Cross it off on your bingo cards. You knew it was coming. Emotional matches in pro wrestling history can't come up without the infamous Montreal Screwjob. It's one of the most discussed incidents in WWE ever, and with bloody good reason. It offered a different kind of emotion to everything else out there, if only because it was 100% real and dangled backstage politics in front of the viewer. There's a dizzying amount of turmoil to be found in Bret Hart's story. His anger at Vince McMahon's treachery, the volley of spit he aimed at his gaffer's face when he realised he'd been had, Shawn Michaels' brattish display as he left the arena with the WWF title, and his cries of innocence when confronted by a distraught hitman in the locker room. It's all still too much, even 22 years on. That's before you even get to Bret punching Vince, drawing out the letters WCW with his hands as the pay-per-view ticked down, and the fallout of Bret screwed Bret, which of course led to the Mr. McMahon character. Survivor Series 1997 will forever be remembered as one of WWE's most controversial nights. Number 2, Chris Benoit versus Bret Hart. Things obviously got even more emotional for Bret when he heard the news that his baby brother Owen had tragically passed away following an accident at the WWF's Over the Edge show in 1999. WCW hadn't been a happy place for Hart anyway, and now he had to deal with the heart-wrenching fact that he'd never see his sibling again. In October of the same year, WCW, to their credit, handed Bret the chance to pay tribute to Owen the only way he knew how. He'd wrestle Chris Benoit on Nitro in a technical clinic, one that'd give Bret the chance to celebrate Owen's legacy in the very same arena he'd fallen to his death some 6 months before. Number 1, Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. If people had believed Ric Flair's career might end back at STARRCADE 1993, then they were really positive it could by 2008's WrestleMania 24. The angle had Flair wrestling a potential last match every time he stepped foot in the ring, and that included his Mania Miracle against Michaels. Aged 50-bloody-9, Rick somehow upheld his end of the bargain and delivered the kind of match a Flair-adoring kid-come-super worker like Michaels, or myself, must have always dreamed about. This, without question, was the best bout Rick had worked for years and years, possibly even decades. It was destined to end in tears. HBK's pre-Superkick whisper of, "I'm sorry, I love you," told it all. If you don't well up at that, you're dead inside. The next night, Ric Flair would get a fitting send-off by WWE, and even though he'd spoil things a tad by returning to the rings a few times afterwards, nothing could destroy the emotion of Mania. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And check out our new podcast by searching for What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.